folks, Kira from the Fish Gals here. Today I'm going to do a water change on the 4 shrimp tanks that you see here behind me. I've got some crystal reds in the first tank with some Shocos. And then I've got crystal blacks in the second tank with some yellow Neos. And in the third tank we've got tangerine tigers and blue velvets. And in this tank here we've got an infestation of snails, but also some blue bolts, some black mazuras, it's a bit of a mixed tank, it's got a lot of Michelins and things like that, and then the red Sakura cherries in there as well. So because they are all mainly Caridina tanks, we keep them at Caridina parameters, and the Neos just adjust to them. Neos will do well in remineralized water or in tap water, but the Caridina can only do well in Oro water that's been remineralized. So when I am doing a water change on these tanks, I usually just adjust the TDS on the water to the parameters that are similar to this, slightly lower TDS. So at the moment they're about 240. I like them around 200 when I do a water change, so that there's space for it to go up a little bit. So I have the water remineralizing and bubbling away with the heater in it to get it to the same temperature, and then I will just add it in fairly quickly because it is the same temperature and a similar TDS. If you don't have a spare heater and you can't heat the water up, and you just get the water to room temperature and then drip it in very slowly. And if you're doing a big change in the water, then I would drip it in slowly as well. But today it's just a quick water change. So I'll take about 2 or 3 inches out of these tanks today because there's been so much evaporation, and then I'll add in the remineralized Oro water about halfway, and the rest of the way will be just plain Oro water that is the same temperature as the tanks, so that the shrimp don't get too much of a shock. When I am doing a water change on these guys, because they have soil substrate in them, they're on Shrimp King, which kind of keeps the pH nice and buffered. I tend not to do a vacuum on these tanks because of the soil in there, otherwise you just get most of the soil particles coming back up. So maybe every 6 months I'll do a good siphon of the tank and a hoover of the substrate. But in general with shrimp tanks, unless they're visibly dirty, like if you have soil in it, then just leave it alone, just kind of suck up a bit at the bottom of the tank. On the surface as you can see it, but I wouldn't be shoving the siphon right down into it to give it a good vacuum on the bottom like you would with a gravel tank. If you just have Neos and they're just on a sand substrate or a gravel substrate, then yeah, absolutely work away, do a full gravel whenever you can. But when there's soil in there, it's quite hard to do a vacuum on soil without disturbing too much of the substrate and releasing all the particles, and you kind of want those particles in there because they're doing their job of buffering it. So I'm going to drain these tanks down a little bit, and then we will fill them back up. So when I'm draining my tanks, I like to use a piece of piping with a sponge filter over, well, a sponge over the bottom of it, so that the baby shrimp don't get sucked in. There's nothing worse than throwing out your shrimp. And then I will just put the tubing into the hard tubing and start the siphon, and that just protects everyone in the tank from getting sucked in. So the sponge filter on the end of the tubing just makes siphoning out the tanks much easier because you're not worried about sucking out any babies. You can do it in a jiffy, otherwise you end up taking ages, being really careful, trying to work around the babies, and you still end up getting some babies sucked out. So you're better off just stick a bit of filter floss or a sponge like that over the end of your siphon when you're doing your shrimp tanks. So now the tanks are drained out as much as I want them. I'm just going to give the sponge filters a little quick clean. So this is the tricky part. And I have to lift them up so that the babies can't get sucked into the holes while you're doing it. Just give them a little run around so that any babies that are on the sponge fly off.
I'm going to give them a quick squish and a dunk in the water that just came out of the shrimp tanks, so that you're not killing any of the bacteria that are on the sponges. And then just pop it back on and back in. So when I have a double sponge like this, I'll only do one sponge at a time, so one each week, and I'm doing a water change so that you're not taking away all of the bacteria that are on the sponges. Now by doing it in the water from the tank itself, you're not taking too much bacteria away anyway, but just in case, I do like to only just do one of them at a time. Over time, these sponge filters will get way too plugged up to be used, and then when that happens, maybe every 6 months, every year, you can replace them, and they just slip off. You can buy replacements for them. If you notice that your water flow is not doing great when the tank is full, obviously, you can take the inside of these out and give them a good clean with a pipe cleaner. That is then done, drained, and filters, sponges cleaned. That's the water after the sponge has been cleaned, so it's absolutely horrible, but full of nutritious goodness for your houseplants and your garden plants, so don't waste it. Chuck it onto your houseplants or the garden plants. At the moment it's lashing rain here, so there's plenty of water outside, so they will go onto my houseplants. So the TDS parts per million is 219 in my remineralized water. Probably just a tiny bit too high. I would like it around 200, but it's not going to worry you too much because I am going to use just normal RO water as well to water that down and top up the tanks a little bit. So I use the bee shrimp mineral GH to remineralize the RO water. Always need a TDS meter when you have Caridina shrimp to make sure that your TDS is okay. Otherwise you can monitor your GH and your KH, and you should do that every now and then as well. But when you are set up and you're comfortable with your GH, then you learn what your TDS should be, and I tend to just work off the TDS. So I have the RO water here with a bubbler in it at the moment to disperse the mineral GH, and a heater in there as well so that the water is the same temperature. Okay, now so for refilling the tanks, at the moment the heater that I put in is not working into the RO system to heat it up, so back to the old-fashioned way of jars and hoses. So I just have a jug coming in, and it's just going in slowly. Now it's going in like that speed because it is room temperature anyway. It doesn't have to heat up that much, and there's still quite a lot of water in there to heat it up as it's going in. And it is of a similar TDS, so it can go in a little bit faster. If the water is cold, then I would literally just pop it in a couple of drops at a time. I have these little valves so you can slow down the speed of it, but it's relatively warm. It's just not the same temperature exactly as the tank, so I'm going to pop it in a little bit faster. Alright, and I love pegs because they make life so much easier for holding everything in place. So I'm going to go and set up lines into all of the tanks and just keep refilling my bucket, and that will do the trick. So that's the water change done and everyone's happy, so I'm going to give them a quick feed of some spirulina bites and let's have a look and see how much they love them. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel just by clicking the link below. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook or Twitter, whatever floats your boat. Have a nice day. Thanks, guys.